Welcome back to another episode of Sessions with System and Soul and with Benj and McKenzie. I'm Benj Miller, my co-host Mackenzie Decker. And today's one of those special sessions where we get to put an entrepreneur, leader, founder in the hot seat. And so we're super glad to have Clint Emerson here with us. Clint is the CEO of CableQuest, and they are a manufacturer of custom cables, cable assembly, wire harnesses, lots of things that I don't know anything about, but they manufacture. They've got several plants across the country. Clint has become a great friend, and it's just a joyful advocate of what we do at System and Soul. So it's really a pleasure, but he's not a client, so we've not had these business conversations. So we're putting him in the hot seat. Mackenzie, Clint, how you feeling this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you. Glad to be here.
And I'm ready to dive in with you. One other thing we should say about Clint, he is such an advocate for community and Christian community, and that's been a big part of his business as well. And that's how we got to know you. I've known Clint since I was a teenager because I hung out with his son and we were in the same friend group, which is also just a whole nother thing. But the way that you have leaned into this idea of not just building a business, but building it to grow communities and help people, that's been amazing to watch just as we've worked alongside you.
Thank you for that. I'm just the mouthpiece. I'm the instrument, right?
And he constantly takes no credit.
I'm following orders.
Yeah.
I read the book of Job. I saw what happens when you don't give credit.
Clint, what's on your mind this morning? Thanks for the openness and vulnerability to jump into the hot seat and what is a public setting.
First, what's on my mind? You minimized to a great extent the role the System and Soul plays for us, because we have a team now of these are the guys that run System and Soul. So it's my son-in-law Jamie Baker and Joe Joy. They're the operators. They're the integrators, the guys that get things done. I'm not that guy. I am the guy that has all the ideas, and they're the ones that have to then implement it. So I can burn energy to get things done, but I have to burn a lot of energy. These guys, they're the ones that take notes, and then they read their notes afterwards. And I don't take notes. I write stuff down, but it's more for posterity or strategy, and just to kind of, tease it out so that I know how to wordsmith it and talk about it. But they're copious note takers and execution artists. So the reason then that I think that we've seen the success we've seen is because the platform from System and Soul is so easy to use, and it's enabled us in such a great way that we are effective. We're getting things done and crossing them off the list. So when you came to me and said, well, what is it that's your most compelling issue that you have to work with? And I went down all the list of the business opportunities, and really it's mostly opportunities, right? That we're facing with in today's manufacturing world. But the true business wasn't what struck me as what we need to accomplish. Our primary mission is, God told Adam and Eve, and he told Noah, produce. And that's what he tells entrepreneurs and investors: go produce. That's the first thing that he commanded. And he blessed us with descendants. So part of his go produce was also, we usually see that in relation to kids and things along those lines, but he also meant it in business. And be a producer, be a creator. He first thing he did with Adam and Eve in the garden was he gave them a job, and it was called caretaker. When Jesus talks about the parable of the talents, the guy that had 10 talents and then was rewarded with 10 more, the reward he got was more work. So, and that's a blessing. It's not a curse. So go produce. The second mission is the Great Commission. And so in order to be a redemptive capitalist, and we steward our profit for a purpose, and in order to be a marketplace ministry, that really is our first mission. Produce and then follow through with the Great Commission. And that's really where, when it comes to taking time, taking stock, giving credit, first fruits, counting your blessings, and then stewarding that into a way to bring people into the kingdom. That's where I want to dwell today with you, because that's been a non-starter for us, at least in terms of the organizational element, the administration, and Benj and McKenzie, you two already know about role that we play together with Faith Driven Movement here in Atlanta about trying to organize and herd all of us leader cats into something that represents what God wants to do in the marketplace. I have the same issue here. I've got a board here that you can see all the writing up over there. That's all the things that we do at Nehemiah Holdings around stewarding God's blessings into leading people to Christ. And so many things are falling through the cracks. It's amazing. Oh, we got all these opportunities. We're still doing things and we're getting things done, and we can count coups and talk about wins, but I'm just amazed at how much we don't get done. And I think that the key issue is to have that execution artist, that person who's highly focused on the kingdom purposes in our company. And that's what I want to talk about today is how do we execute on, that's my hot seat issue, is how do we execute on those, on that method? And maybe it's not a position, maybe it's some other way, but really just sitting down and taking the time to get out of the whirlwind that happens in our business and being intentional about what we're really here for.
Yeah. So let me try and recap that to make sure that I'm hearing you right. So lots of stuff's going well, but there's so much more possibility that you're seeing, and you guys are lacking the capacity to go execute on all these other opportunities?
That's definitely part of the answer. It might be just not having the resources, therefore you don't have the capacity. It's me trying to be that answer for an event, for organizing an activity, for creating, even if it's something as simple as maybe I can give you a kind of a real life picture of what I'm talking about in an example. We employ the marketplace chaplains in our business. So they come in every week and they're great people. All three of our plants have marketplace chaplains. On top of them, there's a hierarchy of a regional person. In our world with marketplace chaplains, every one of our plants is in a different region, but we have one person who is meant to bring them all together. Now, concurrently, we have Disciple Church. So Joshua Davis is our in-house chaplain. He's fractional. He comes in the first and third Friday of every month, and he leads a Bible study for our larger larger company. And he does it pan company. So he's like North Point. He holds the lesson here, and then he has technology. He's former Microsoft software engineer. He has technology, and he's able to stand in front of the camera, pipe it into our other plants, give the lesson that's based on the information he's gleaned from working with the marketplace chaplains. So it's topical for our people, and it's translated real time. I mean, it's real time translation. Like as soon as he says the word, it goes into Spanish or any other language we might need. And this is, again, across our platform. Pretty cool, very effective. One of the outcomes was at one of these sessions, because of the way he linked up with the marketplace chaplains, we had 5 people make a faith election in our business. That's 5 people at one time. I'm not counting coups here. I'm not taking a census, but I thought that was pretty good. But then we start going into the other areas of opportunity, and really, when I look across the platform, I have one area where the chaplains are so invested. They show up for the Friday session, and they so instead of coming in their one day a week on another day, they make sure that first and third Friday that they come that day. And they're down in my Warner Robins facility. And the person who really is kind of the inspiration, and I'd say that, you know, her cohort who's come alongside of her, she has expressed to us that her level of connection with our operators and associates, because of the ability to relate to them during the Bible study and be face to face and not have the distractions of work, she is 10 times, maybe 15, 20 times more effective. She has so many more interactions where she's privately dealing with the life issues that these people have, and she's meeting them where they are, and she's able to engage them. And when they're seeking, she can have a faith answer for them. But there's also practical application where they might just have a resource issue, like they have medical debt, or they have health issues, or they have family members in jail. I mean, so she's able to either meet them with her capabilities or bring our other non-governmental organizational resources. So we have non-government organizations that are around our plants. She can tap them to bring them in. So all that, you know, I just mentioned three groups: the marketplace chaplains, the disciple church, and the non-governmental organizations. It's really loosely affiliated. Like, I have one area, but I don't have all three functioning at that level. My disciple church, he is dynamite. I mean, he is switched on, and he is intense. And it's almost like, I mean, I've got my hand on the bridle with him, because like he's just like charging, and he's trying to be an entrepreneur in the faith business. And you know, I like it, but it's like, okay, how do we harness this and hold on? Well, in the same time, I've got all these NGOs around us that do great things, and we don't utilize them. So that's kind of a cloud of issues just in one area, where if I have one person who focuses on that, I think it's a resource. If I put that person to work with me, they can be that communication, that center point, that kind of organizational piece that brings all these disparate groups together in a meaningful way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you sparked a couple of things there that I think you talked it out and answered your own question there, with it being a resource that kind of really maximizes all of the relationships and partners that you have. But we in System and Soul, we think about it in terms of bets, right? So obviously this is core to you, central to you. So if we're thinking about, you know, the limited resources that we have in any organization, like chips on a roulette table, right? And we can put some on 32 red and whatever, you know, we've got to place them on the table, but we have a finite number of chips. And so where do we get the highest return? Where is, you know, the risk reward relationship, that balance, where's that make the most sense? And what I hear from you is this is like central and core to what you believe your business is to be doing. So if it is, then my question is, are you placing adequate bets? And we say, well, it's a resource constraint issue. It's like, well, maybe we've got to actually figure that out. The other thing to prioritize that resource, right? And maybe it's not a today thing. Maybe it's like, hey, we're going to work our way to this, and this is going to be our 2026 thing, right? When we get a vision for something, it doesn't always mean we can do it today. The other thing is, I just thought, like, was your lady Maria? Was that her name that you were mentioning a minute ago? Did I capture the name right?
The one.
Yeah, Warner Robin, like some deep conversations.
Yeah, that's Lisa.
Lisa. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I just there's a picture in my mind of, like, what if part of the vision for how this is implemented is that you train every manager that manages people to lead like Lisa. Because when we're leading people, we're leading their whole self. We're not leading just the part that shows up to, punch the clock from 9 to 5. They're bringing that financial anxiety, that healthcare anxiety, that family relationship. We show up with all of ourselves to work. And so if we can train our leaders and managers to have those kind of conversations, it almost lessens your need for the outside people because they're all inside at that point. But that's the long game to what we're talking about. Right. And it takes a long time to train people to be able to lead at that level. McKenzie, I'm curious what you heard or thoughts, questions as Clint was talking.
Yeah, Clint, I'm curious about, like you mentioned, these like separate groups that are all working towards this one goal. And I'm wondering, do you think the mission and the vision for what you want to see, do you think that's clear to all of those groups?
Yes. Yeah. They have their platforms and how they're effective individually and how they can operate. So if you think about the definition of the term chaplain, they don't traditionally in the services, in the armed services, they don't lead with their faith. So they are not only ecumenical when it comes to faith, but they're even broader than that for people of non-faith. So they'll visit the soldier in the foxhole. The bullets are flying. That person has real fears, and they're there to care and comfort the soldier in the time of stress. Okay. And, I'm simplifying it, of course, but it's just to be an anchor for that person when they're really sinking, or when they might be drifting off, or or maybe a lifesaver when they're sinking. And so when you think about them trying to employ seminary trained ministers in every business out there times 1,000 times 10,000 across the nation and internationally, they can't really go in there with like a Bible study, because we think about all of the different versions of that they'd have to have, and then the skill set about delivering that. So they make a simple package, and that's how they go about their business. Well, when you allow that in your business as the way it's modeled, it's typically passively managed, and however that particular minister conducts their business is what you get. Now, we do get an organized quarterly set of macro results that are public data, right? It's the number of interactions and the types of interactions, the types of problems and issues that the people are seeing. And we see that every quarter. And then we can do something with that. And that's how we're informed about what we might put in the content of any company communication or Bible study, or even the weekly or the bi-weekly lesson plans. So, there's that connection, but you have to be intentional about now bringing your outside resource in to sit in with you in that macro data. And then you have to be intentional about reaching out to the marketplace chaplains and inviting them and encouraging them to be there on that day. And by the way, it's not like they make it's not like their livelihood's dependent on this. It's not a huge fee. They really operate in about, like one of our chaplains, the best one, she operates in 6 hours a week of visiting. That's it, 6 hours. So they're very fractional. Now, when we start bringing in the non-governmental organizations, you have every single one of these NGOs has their own organization and the way they conduct business. So, you're really interacting with people that are disparate, but you want to collect them, right?
Yeah. It makes me wonder if you could ever, like once a year, I don't even know if they'd be open to this, but once a year, you put them all in the same room so that they all know each other. They all know what each other can do, can't do, and how to work together. And maybe it's like, I don't know if there's definitely a vision cast from you for what you desire in your organization.
I
So
would,
Joshua, so Joshua Davis, he's an entrepreneur, and he's take charge. So he did that. I didn't do it. He did it. So he holds
That's
a
awesome.
monthly meeting where he invites all of the chaplains in, and we go through how to align. And what's interesting is that we only get 2 chaplains show up. Now, I have not gone out personally and appealed to these chaplains, except in a couple small minor connection points. But I can do that, right? I can go out and I can personally appeal to them and say, can you show up for this Teams meeting? It's an hour a month. Can you show up? And this is the time. And if we can't, can we find a time where everybody can join? So, there's that part that I don't need somebody to do that. I can do that. But we have sent out emails, right? We've sent out multiple emails. We had 3 sessions, and all 3 sessions, only 2 attended.
Clint, if you had somebody full-time in your business, full-time dedicated to what you're talking about right now, what would you hope that would accomplish?
So I'm going to back up. This is what you're saying is make the decision. Is it really a resource? So, I've talked to this person and I've talked to that person because they kind of showed up as maybe potential candidates before. And I do have the makings of a job description and a job profile. But you know how we entrepreneurs operate, right? It's like we find this piece of talent on the side of the road and we spot them and they're like, come on, we grab them, right? But that person hasn't really showed up yet.
yeah.
This is probably a help wanted ad to some degree. I find talent in places, and if I'm not ready for them, I put them in my pocket until I am ready. And then I call on them and say, hey, can you join us? And that's worked pretty well. But that person that I'm thinking of, I just haven't come across them yet.
I would, if I could jump in on one thing that I think is really important here. I mean, this is a perfect example of like you have an amazing vision for what can happen. If you can get this right, you've got a whiteboard full of ideas, and it's like, how do we get someone to just take this and run with it with the intensity and the intention and the same depth of value that you're looking at it? And so I do think, like, I would totally agree. Like, it sounds like there's a resource here. The one thing I would challenge adding to your description is some set of like, what value system does this person just naturally hold in themselves? Like, what do they deeply care about? Because I think that piece, like, that might be the piece that, like, you can't just like go pick them up off the side of the road, because you've got to find the person who has the heart that can carry it. And there's a couple, like you said a few times, like there's a few attributes I heard you mention. One was they're intentional. One was that they are like they're a proactive person. They're a deeply caring person. Like they're people who they get it and they're like, I don't need to be told. I'll automatically see what needs to happen. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I think that's like a value system and a character trait that's essential to whoever can come in and work alongside you with this. But I really think they've really got to understand this vision, and they really got to share the values that you have as well.
So I think the benchmark is there's a guy that's a very dear friend of mine. He's a friend in Christ. His name is Dave Murray, and he's responsible at a large data center company called QTS for people. When I was at Home Bank Mortgage, we had Ike Reichert, who's now the head of Must Ministries, and Pat Flood had the vision for that. Casey Crawford in Movement Mortgage, he had a guy, I think his last name's Phelan, Phelan. He's now with Faith Driven Movement. So, there's role models out there of people who've done something like this. And so I've looked at those and thought about modeling this person at that. So first and foremost, what they have is they have a heart for Christ, and that's their primary. You might think, well, a retired minister, maybe somebody like that. But believe it or not, that hasn't fit in the instances I've gone after it. I mean, they're retired for a reason.
Right. The season of life does not serve the speed of execution and the intention that you need, right? Like they're probably looking for I could do something purposeful, but I also want to keep my free time. And that's probably not it.
Yeah. I mean, when somebody's 30, 40 years serving in their role and they want to retire, I mean, I respect that. So,
Right, of course.
Yeah, but,
Clint, this sounds like one of those things where you're kind of just in the messy middle of figuring it out. You're on a path. You're not lost. You're just on a path to figure it out. I'm curious as you and this is one of the things that I dislike about coaching is sometimes there's not like okay, just go do this. So I'm curious what hit you. Was there any bit of clarity in this for you, this conversation?
What you made me do even before the session was to go through with my team and say, what do we want to talk about? And we listed 10 things that we're working on. And it was pretty clear and obvious which one we had to talk about. It's this topic. And it's a non-traditional business topic, right? It's not something that it's not going to make, from a Harvard business case study standpoint, you wouldn't see it. But I really believe that when you do this one, this is how you unlock all the blessings, right? And the blessings may not be material wealth. It'll be kingdom wealth.
Well, we talk about it. I mean, there's all kinds of layers of this, and most entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they want to make some sort of an impact. Mm-hmm. It's very rarely driven by the money, and so sometimes we lose track of that. We start reading business books and we get distracted. But I love that you're continually putting this at the center of your bullseye for your business, and honestly, every entrepreneur you come in contact with, you are an evangelist for what your business can be in a kingdom mindset. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your vulnerability coming on here. I think you're actually really close to figuring this out, and you're on the path. And yeah, sometimes it is just saying, hey, we've got all this stuff, but what is the most important thing for us to go tackle? And having that conversation with your team can unlock a lot, because now there's 10 other things that are important, but they're not the most important. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Clint, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
What were you saying, McKenzie?
The other thing that maybe you unintentionally mentioned is it sounds like you've discovered that it's a who, not a how. So you've got your whiteboard of all the things that you said are falling through the cracks. But what we've been talking about is we could go and try and solve the problem of things that are falling through the cracks, or you could go and find the person who can lead that. And it sounds like that's a decision in your mind that you've made in this process as well. That's a really, really big step. So I want to encourage that too. I think oftentimes we look at trying to plug the holes of something rather than how do we look at this in a bigger lens. And so I think I heard that today as we were talking too.
Yeah. It's just, finding that person on Indeed.
That's not, yeah.
Right. That's the hard part.
No, but somebody knows somebody, and somebody knows
somebody. And I think it's just an intentional prayer, and then we're going to turn around the corner and there they are.
Yeah, that's right. On the side of the road. Okay. Hey, 2 quick shout outs. One to you, Clint. Thank you so much for being willing to be on here with us, putting you in the hot seat, talking about your business. I think most leaders could benefit from it, but there's a shame that keeps us from talking about our problems out loud and getting help. So kudos to you for your vulnerability and courage, and shout out to Fist Bumps, who helps us produce and put on sessions every week. So we will see